Tyrese Haliburton is in the midst of a legendary postseason run, showing the entire NBA world that he is anything but overrated. He is a superstar level player that is one of the best offensive engines in recent NBA history. At the time I make this, the Indiana Pacers are up 3-1 and will likely finish off the New York Knicks. But how did they do it? How did a team that was not favored in 2 of their last 3 playoff series make it all the way to the NBA Finals? Tyrese Haliburton wasn't even an all-star this season, and now he is going to lead his team against one of the best regular season teams we have ever seen. And honestly, I think they have more of a chance in that series that you may think. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people. Haliburton has had multiple game-winning shots this postseason, something only a few players have ever done. He has far surpassed his expectations. The Pacers have far surpassed his expectations. But let's start back at the regular season to see how Tyrese Haliburton did this. Not making an all-star team this year, Tyrese Haliburton was still recognized as one of the league's best players, making his second All-NBA nomination. He averaged 18 points and 9 assists on 47, 38, 85 shooting splits, which is pretty solid. However, these numbers are also a bit skewed as Haliburton did have a rough start to this season, which is where the overrated allegations came from. And this is shown as after the All-Star break, Tyrese Haliburton was on another level. After the All-Star break, the Pacers went 16-5. Haliburton averaged 20 points and 11 assists with only 1 turnover per game. He did this on a 53, 44, 86 shooting split. Imagine scoring 20 points per game, shooting 44% from 3 with an 11-to-1 assist to turnover ratio. He already led the league in assist to turnover, but he basically doubled that, what he did on the regular season post All-Star break. That's not just overrated, if anything, I would say we underrated Tyrese Haliburton, as those marks make you one of the best guards and one of the best players in the entire NBA. And all the advanced stats back up Tyrese Haliburton as well. Post All-Star break, he had an offensive rating, that is the amount of points the Pacers would score in 100 possessions, of 124, and he had a defensive rating, that would be the amount of points the Pacers give up when Haliburton is on the court, of 112, giving him a net rating of plus 12. His true shooting percentage post All-Star break was also up to 68%, which is incredible and would be the highest of his career. According to basketballreference.com, his PER was also around 22. He had a career-high win shares of 10.4, a box plus minus of 5.8, and a value over replacement player of 4.9. And all of these were his stats for the entire year, so I would assume that his stats just post All-Star break would have been much better and probably would have been career highs. He stands 6'5", which is already a little bit bigger for your average point guard. He is a generational playmaker, has great vision, is incredibly flashy, but he's not flashy at the expense of his team. He has one of the best assist to turnover ratios in NBA history, and like I said already, led the NBA in that category. He is elite in the pick and roll and can beat you in a variety of ways in it. It's no surprise that according to NBA.com, he was basically the best pick and roll player in the NBA, sitting in the 97th percentile of all players. The first way he did this was just the fact that he was a great passer. He was 3rd in assists this season and also ranked towards the top of potential assists that would have counted if the shot went in, and he was near the top in secondary assists, which is basically a pass to a pass that leads to a bucket. On top of that, he also had 2 of the best pick and roll players in the league, the first being Pascal Siakam, who is elite at rolling to the hoop, and then Miles Turner, who is an elite pick and fade target. But then you take the passing out of the equation. What else do you get from Tyrese Haliburton? Well, as I said, he was a 44% shooter post All-Star break from 3, so we know he can shoot the outside shot despite having a very funky shooting form. He also likes to attack the mid-range area, an area that not a lot of players go after in the modern game, but he makes about 1 attempt per game, at least so far in the playoffs. And even though Tyrese Haliburton is not elite finishing at the rim, he is one of the best floaters in the entire league. So when he goes up against those 7-foot players, he has no issue just floating the ball over them to where they can't touch it. And we really saw this against the Cleveland Cavaliers, a team that ran 2 bigs. So in this recent stretch, there are 2 players that I find Tyrese really compares to. That would be a modern day Steve Nash or LaMelo Ball. He matches LaMelo Ball in the fact that they are both great, flashy playmakers. However, unlike LaMelo, he is a lot more efficient in not turning the ball over. He's also a bit more healthy than LaMelo Ball, and his play has obviously led to team success, and this is where the comparisons of Steve Nash come through. Nash was efficient not just as a shooter, which is something Tyrese has shown he can be. He wasn't efficient just as a shooter, but also as a playmaker, as Nash was also one of the best playmakers and arguably the best pick and roll player in NBA history. Although I'm a Suns fan, so there may be a little bit of bias on that. But I can confidently say that in watching Tyrese Haliburton, he is the modern day Steve Nash. They're both great ball handlers, they both attack the mid-range, and they can both make a three either catching the ball or from pulling up. But all this tells me, and it should tell you, that Tyrese Haliburton is an elite offensive engine. The Pacers go from the 6th worst offense to the 4th best offense when Tyrese steps onto the floor. And that is because he can beat you in multiple ways. If his outside shot isn't going, he can hit you with the inside shot. He can hit you as a great playmaker. He can hit you in the pick and roll. He can beat you in transition. There's not really a way that Tyrese Haliburton can't beat you and can't be effective. If his teammates aren't making shots, he can take over, and he definitely takes over, especially in the clutch. But if his own shot isn't falling, he can rely on his teammates. There is a reason why the Pacers finished as such a high seed and such an efficient offense by the end of the season. And if you look at this Pacers starting lineup, something I'll talk about a bit later, these guys are guys who play as well as they do because of Tyrese Haliburton. Pascal Siakam was already an all-star, but guys like Aaron Nesmith, Andrew Nembhard, guys like Miles Turner are made better because they play with Tyrese Haliburton. Pascal Siakam is an all-star player, but I would also say that Pascal Siakam is a better player when he is playing alongside an elite ball handler in Tyrese Haliburton. Post All-Star break, the Pacers went 20-9, only having the 13th best offense. However, they also posed up the 8th best defense, and like I said, they were 16-5 when Haliburton played. Going into these playoffs, these Pacers were an incredibly hot team, and unfortunately the Bucks were on the wrong end of that. Now, Indiana was already favored going up against Milwaukee as the Bucks were missing Damian Lillard for the first half of the series. In Game 1, Haliburton struggled from the field, but he proved that him just being on the court is good for the Pacers as he led the entire team and had his series best plus-minus of plus 27. Tyrese came back in Game 2, dropping 21 and 12. And then in Game 4, he dropped 17 and 15 assists, which is pretty remarkable. In an overtime thriller in Game 5, Tyrese Haliburton dropped 8 points in overtime, including a game-winning layup, which sealed the Bucks' season. And possibly Giannis's time in Milwaukee. We don't know yet. But in this Game 5, Haliburton put up 26 points, 9 assists, 3 steals, and 3 blocks while still being pretty efficient from the field. Absolutely insane. By this point, the overrated accusations were kind of starting to drop, but like I said, they were favored against the Bucks, so nobody really was too surprised. But Haliburton would shut up all the rest of his haters by the time he faced the Cleveland Cavaliers, the #1 seed of the Eastern Conference. But in Game 1, the Indiana Pacers shut up everyone. They shocked the Cavaliers on their own court, and Haliburton put up 22 points and 13 assists. And then in Game 2, we saw another legendary Haliburton performance. The Pacers would come back from being down 20 points, and with 10 seconds left, down by 2 points, Tyrese Haliburton missed his own free throw, got the rebound, pulled it out. He said, "Nah, I'd win," hit a crossover step-back three-pointer with just a second left, stealing Game 2 after the Cavaliers lost the lead. In a series they were heavily favored to win, Cleveland was now down 0-2, losing both home games. Mind you, Cavaliers fans were literally chanting overrated minutes earlier, and Tyrese made them pay in the sweetest of ways. Game 3 was then forgettable, but Game 4 was a 20-point blowout in the Pacers' favor. And in Game 5, Tyrese would again have his highest scoring game of the series, putting up 31 points, 8 assists, and 6 rebounds to eliminate Cleveland. In back-to-back elimination games, Tyrese Haliburton would have his highest scoring game of the series. I don't think that's a coincidence either. And that brings us to our current series against the New York Knicks. We all know what happened in Game 1. The Pacers came back from down 14 points. Tyrese Haliburton hit a crazy shot as time expired, hit them with the Reggie Miller choke. Unfortunately, it was only a 2 instead of a 3-pointer, so they went to overtime, and then the Pacers win in overtime. Game 2 saw a Tyrese Haliburton double-double as the Pacers again won. That is back-to-back wins in Madison Square Garden, back-to-back series where they win the first 2 games on their opponent's home floor after being the underdog. They lose game 3 on their home court, but I do want to say that the Pacers are literally undefeated in these playoffs outside of game 3, which is actually kind of remarkable. Then game 4 was the inspiration of this video. The Pacers survived the Knicks in the clutch, and Tyrese Haliburton put up one of the best stat lines we've ever seen in NBA playoff history. 32 points, 15 assists, 12 rebounds, 5 threes, 4 steals, 0 turnovers. The first performance like that in NBA history. And now they are up 3-1 in a series that I heavily expect the Pacers to win, and they are just 1 game away, and by the time you're seeing this, they might already be in the NBA Finals. Tyrese Haliburton was literally matched up against the league's clutch player of the year, Jalen Brunson. However, it's been Tyrese that has not just been the more clutch one of this series, but he has been Mr. Clutch of the entire postseason. Haliburton has hit 3 game-winning or tying shots this postseason, 1 in every series. That is already something that very few players have ever done. But he has done even more in the clutch. According to the NBA, clutch time is defined as a 5-point game with less than 5 minutes left. In clutch time, the Pacers are 7-1 in the postseason. Already crazy. Tyrese Haliburton is second in scoring 4 points per game in the clutch. He also averages 1 assist in the clutch, which is good for second in the NBA. He's doing this on 50% from the field, 38% from 3, and 86% from the line, which is pretty efficient as a lot of players are not that efficient in the clutch. So his offensive and defensive ratings are also pretty insane. Remember, this is what a player would do if they were on the court for 100 possessions. So for what Tyrese Haliburton does in the clutch, over an entire game, that would be the equivalent of scoring 145 points per 100 possessions. Absolutely insane, because defensively, it's only 113, basically his playoffs average. And his playoff average on offense is 122. So when he is on the court in the clutch, the Pacers get better by nearly 22 points by 100 possessions. That is completely crazy. The man shows up. So Tyrese has the clutch stats. He has the clutch moments. But then on top of that, he also has 2 double-digit comebacks in the playoffs. Not something we see a whole lot. That alone is clutch. And then also throw in, the Pacers are undefeated in games where they could eliminate their opponent. Assuming that they win tonight, that would be 3-0 in elimination games. Winning in elimination games is incredibly clutch because, in my opinion, elimination games for those entire 48 minutes is a clutch scenario. No matter how you look at it, Tyrese Haliburton is not just clutch, he is the most clutch person in this postseason. But along with that, the Pacers would just not be where they are if it weren't for Haliburton and his black magic. Both on and off the court, Tyrese has been a leader for the Pacers. He is one of the best playmakers in the league, and we've seen that as in these playoffs, all 4 of the other Pacers starters, that being Siakam, Turner, Nesmith, and Nembhard, all 4 of those guys are scoring more points per game than they did in the regular season. Mind you, the playoffs slow down. The playoffs lean towards the defense, and that's where referees' whistles usually get a little bit tighter. You rarely see a lot of players scoring more. You don't see an entire lineup scoring more in the playoffs than they did in the regular season. And while yes, a lot of this goes to a lot of those players stepping up and Rick Carlisle having an amazing postseason coaching run, but I think this also shows that Tyrese Haliburton has raised his game and is raising the game of those around him. In these playoffs, the Pacers are 12 points per 100 possessions better when Haliburton is on the court. Surprisingly, they are also about 5 points better on defense when Haliburton is on the court. Mind you, Haliburton was a defensive negative, that meaning that the Pacers got worse during the regular season when he was on the court. However, he has turned up his defense this postseason, and so have the rest of the Pacers. Nobody used to think of this Indianapolis team as a good defensive team. But because of this, he has a net rating of plus 17. For reference, that is the same amount as Nikola Jokic this postseason. That is 6 points better than Steph Curry and Luka Doncic in this postseason, and that is 11 points better than Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the league's MVP, this postseason. The Pacers need Haliburton on the court, and when he goes up to the court, he makes them a better team and he raises them more than some other superstar players do. This isn't an end-all be-all stat, but if that doesn't show that he's this postseason MVP, I don't know what does. Outside of that, I also want to talk about his consistency, because for a star player, Haliburton has been pretty consistent this postseason, usually only having one bad game per series, which is pretty good for a player of this magnitude. But the thing with Haliburton is, like I said, he's that offensive engine. He can beat you through his scoring or through his playmaking. So even if his shot isn't falling, he usually has a lot of assists. If his assists aren't there, he usually has a lot of points. He does seem to be having about that one bad game per series, and the Pacers seem to lose in that one bad game per series, but every other game, he is showing up in some sort of a way, and he is leading his team, whether it be defensively, whether it be as a passer, or whether it be as a scorer. And then if you're just unlucky, he might just drop 25 while being an elite playmaker, and if that's happening, I don't think there's anything you can do against this Pacers team. There is a reason why Tyrese Haliburton is leading the entire playoffs when it comes to secondary assists, potential assists, and assist points per game. Haliburton deserves the recognition for leading this team as far as they've gotten. Yes, in the first two series, they were playing against injured teams. However, they were still favored against that Cavaliers team, and they did their job in defeating the Milwaukee Bucks. And at the time I make this, they're up 3-1 on a healthy and favored New York Knicks team. They're playing well no matter who you put in front of them. The Pacers were not supposed to be here. They were not supposed to win, but nobody told that to Tyrese Haliburton and his black magic. Assuming the Pacers finish off the New York Knicks tonight, I'm going to be breaking down the finals matchup of the Pacers versus the Thunder. We're talking an elite defense, a historic defense versus an elite offense being led by a player on the best run of his career. This is an unstoppable force versus an immovable object. This is two small market teams, neither of which have ever won the NBA Finals, competing for their first ever championship. This is a basketball enthusiast's dream, and I will certainly be covering every single game of this series. Regardless of what happens to the Pacers in the finals, this playoff run has bigger implications. First off, it proves that Tyrese Haliburton is not the overrated player that the NBA players voted him as. Second, to me, this also proves that he might just be in that superstar conversation, or at the very least, in the conversation of guys who are capable of being the star player on an NBA championship team, or at least a team that can make it to the last 4 surviving NBA teams. Next, this also proves that he can raise his teammates to a higher level. Nobody expected guys like Turner and Nembhard and Naismith to be playing as well as they did. And yes, those players have risen on their own, but I think Haliburton has also raised those players through his play and through his gravity. Lastly, the most important thing that this playoff run does, in my opinion, is that it puts the Pacers on the map. Indy is a pretty small market by NBA standards. Usually we don't see a lot of major free agents going to this team. However, having a bona fide NBA superstar, somebody who is good enough to be the #1 guy on a team at least making the NBA Finals, that could draw in other superstar players. That could draw in guys who want to go ahead and play with Tyrese and play with Siakam and play with Turner and play with Coach Carlisle. Tyrese, at least on the court and from what it seems like off the court, seems like the kind of guy that players want to play with. Not the kind of guy who would leave to go and play with other guys. Tyrese seems like the kind of guy that a young player would want to go play with, as he seems like this generation's Chris Paul or Steve Nash. He's the kind of guy that a star may want to go play with, and we're talking a major star, as Kevin Durant and Giannis Antetokounmpo might be on the trade block this offseason. He's the kind of guy that a ring-chasing veteran might want to go play with, as Tyrese might just make them a little bit better than what they are, and he might give them a chance in the dance. This playoff run has showed to me that Indy is just a little bit better than what we thought, and if the rest of the league sees that, maybe we might just see some players wanting to play with Tyrese Haliburton. So even if he can't win them a finals this year, he may have just set them up to being an elite team in the future. Regardless of what happens in the finals, Tyrese Haliburton has caused the Pacers to overperform. He has put Indy on the map, and he has put them on the radar of even casual NBA fans. He turned the Pacers into one of the hottest teams in the league while also establishing himself as one of the most clutch players in the NBA. He is an elite offensive engine that can score on you or playmake on you in a variety of ways. If Tyrese Haliburton steps onto the court, your defense is in trouble because that offense is automatically better by his presence. Tyrese Haliburton is far from overrated, and I would argue has become one of the most underrated stars in the NBA. But for all these reasons mentioned, that is why no matter what happens in the NBA Finals, Tyrese Haliburton is the postseason MVP. Guys, if you liked the video and if you want to see me cover the NBA Finals, hit the like button and sub down below. I want to hear your thoughts about Haliburton. I want to hear your thoughts on the finals and hear your thoughts about what is up and coming in the NBA. But that is it for this video. If you like it, you know what to do, and I will catch you all later.